Hello and welcome to this presentation about a context diagram, and this is an analysis tool. The intended audience for this presentation is VCE students studying software development or computing in Year 11. Our learning intention is that students can explain the purpose and the conventions of a context diagram. So, before we talk about a context diagram, you probably need to have a good understanding of a use case diagram, which is what I've presented here. So I actually used my use case diagram while I was building my context diagram, although they have different stories to tell. Just to refresh your memory, the use case diagram is talking about users and what their tasks are. So these are verbs here, so nouns over here for the actors, which are often users, and verbs here for the things that they're doing, and that will drill down to a greater level of documentation. But you want to make sure that you've got what we call traceability, so that the stuff that is represented in here can be produced in the next document. They don't actually sit in pillars as such. So you want to have your use case diagram done first, and then you go to your context diagram. Now I'm not going to go into a lot of detail at this stage, but this is the context diagram that matches that use case diagram. I actually pretty much hate context diagrams. I find them terribly painful to make. I find getting all these curvy lines to behave themselves to be really difficult. I find the fact that you've got so many arrows coming in and out of the system. But what they do have in common is that whereas the system is represented by this rectangle here in the use case diagram, it's represented by this circular object here, which is the Molly database. Now that's just the name of my program, it's not actually a database, and I should have known better on there. And my external entities are the user, the admin, and the Molly API. Now I actually didn't mention the Molly API because the user doesn't directly interact with it. But now we're starting to talk about data flows. Before we do that, I just want to have a look at this picture here, this analogy if you like, that if we were to build this system here with these different machines having data flowing in and out and between each other, we would actually want to know how many pipes we're going to need, which machine they go to and from, how wide the pipes need to be, what sort of content is going to be flowing through the pipe, and this is the purpose, or at least a context diagram, is the start of this discussion. So it's a high-level graphical representation that shows the interactions between a system and external entities or stakeholders. So when we say high level, we mean there is still a degree of abstraction. It's not actually saying exactly or precisely what the data is, but it is describing the data that's going through. We go into that level of detail in the data flow diagrams. This actually is a data flow diagram. It's what's called a level 1 data flow diagram. And the level 0, I'm not sure what I said there. This is level 0. The other ones that we're going to be doing are level 1. So we create this first, and it gives us an overview of the boundaries and interactions. So here is my database, and let's talk about the features. So the central process or system is represented as a single circle. So you don't have multiples of these, although Lord knows it would make life easier. But that is the system there. All the data that goes in, all the data that goes out is going in and out of that kind of monolith in the middle. The external entities, actors or systems, are shown as rectangles, and they sit around the central circle, and part of that is just practicality. You just need a lot of contact points with the circle. And directional arrows indicate data flow or information flow. Now this is probably the most important thing. So for example, following this line here, I hand in the credentials to log in. I hand that to the system, and the system hands back, and that's why that arrow is going there, it hands back my login status. I hand in my credentials to create the account and confirmation of account. The ID of the item I want to look at, the details of the item. You'll notice I'm not saying the ID, the actual description. I'm talking about it at a higher level than that, because this is complicated enough without having to go chapter and verse. They're a mess, and they're a pain to draw, but what it does mean is that everybody's on the same page in terms of what information is going to go into the system and what information is going to come out of the system. So it's a little bit more abstract than when we were looking back here at the use case, which is just what are people going to do. This is what data is going to flow in and flow out. And so instead of talking about verbs like we did, we're actually talking about nouns. We're passing in the credentials to log in. We're getting back the login status. So it's actually talking about what we're moving rather than what we're doing. So where are we? There's the features. Yeah, external entities, directional arrows, and they include data inputs from external sources, and so they're the ones where it goes from the external source with an arrow pointing into the system, and data outputs to external destinations. They don't always have to have like a matching pair. So for instance, I'm putting in the category to view or a search term, and I'm getting back the names and images of matching terms. So I've kind of got two different things I can put in and one thing that I get back for both of them. I think the weakness of this is that sometimes it can be really confusing, what created what. I've tried to put them in pairs as much as I can so that a reasonable person can look and say, oh yeah, that's what's being passed out, that's what's coming back. They are a real pain to do. I actually think they might be better done on pen and paper, if truth be told, and that's certainly an option for you. So, what tools can you use? Well, I ended up using a thing called Lucidchart. Now, there is a free level of Lucidchart, and I've used it before for things. I found it to be by far the best tool that I encountered, but I didn't do a comprehensive search. I did start on apps.diagram.net, which is what I'd used for my use case diagram, and I was well underway, but gee, I was finding it frustrating, not because of the tool, just because they're a real pain to make. And if you're feeling especially brave, you could use Google Drawing or Google Draw, I'm not sure which of those it's called. So when we would wrap up, and if you're watching this, you're not here with me in person, but what is the purpose of a context diagram? And see if you can explain that to your own satisfaction.